This is the Diversity, Equality and Inclusion webinar from the Changemaker Group, and really delighted to have the specific panelists that we've got here today. So whether you're joining us live right now or you're able to watch this later, I'm sure you're going to get a ton of insights from this webinar. The objectives that we have in mind are to discover innovative ways to level the playing field and remove unconscious bias, which is a real challenge we know in many organizations. Have time and a safe space to share thoughts and ideas in a confidential environment. Take away some practical tips and identify what you need to do next to create your powerful DEI agenda. So that's what we're aiming to do. And now, got a quick poll for you all. So tick all that apply and let's see what are the specific things you're encountering at the moment. So unconscious bias came out top. Second comes commitment of senior team, followed by backlash against woke culture, and then culture and budget. And trailing up at the end, we've got willful misunderstanding of legislation or just too difficult. So here are our amazing panelists today. I'm going to ask them each to sort of just introduce themselves very briefly with just a sentence or two. But Judith Germain, Ricky Arundel, and Dr. Danielle Farrel are here to give us an insight, or a bunch of insights actually, into the sheer array of challenges in this DEI space. I think you'll hear from all three of them lots of complexity, and then when you start to ripple that out and think of all the different aspects of diversity, equality and inclusion, you start to see just how much of a big challenge this is as opposed to multiple small challenges. So let me now introduce you to, first of all, Judith Germain. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. I create clear thinking and decisive leaders, specialising in maverick leadership, change and diversity and culture.
Thank you, Judith. And Ricky.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Or so good afternoon now, isn't it? Yeah, I'm a trans woman. Well, not actually a trans woman. I'm actually a trans feminine non-binary person, which makes it really more complex. We said this backlash against woke culture, and that's the kind of thing which is creating it, people's different identities. So although I specialize within the LGBTQ community, much of what I'm going to be talking about today applies across all protected characteristics anyway. So I look forward to talking later.
Thanks, Ricky. And Dr. Danielle Farrel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Danielle Farrel, and I'm the Managing Director of Your Options Understood. And in short, I use my lived experience of living with disability to provide a range of services to disabled people and families, but also to businesses and employers who seek guidance on understanding what inclusion really means for their organisations.
Brilliant. Thanks, Danielle. Okay, we're going to hand over first to, so each of our panelists is going to give us a set of 3 insights. Now, obviously, if we'd allowed them, they could have each given us probably a 2-hour or even a full day workshop on all of these issues, but we've asked them just keep it nice, short and succinct around 3 insights. So between them, we've got 9 really hard-hitting insights that hopefully you'll be able to distill a lot of value for your organization. And we're going to start with Judith Germain. So if everybody just wants to put themselves on mute for a moment, then we'll hand over to Judith. If you have any questions, put them into the chat. My colleague Jill Whittington is going to be helping me today and monitoring the chat. So if you have any specific questions, put them there and we'll either answer them at the end of each individual part or towards the end of the webinar today. Okay, Judith, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, my first insight: if you're not anti-racist, are you really showing that you don't care? So when you have a bullying harassment policy, especially after the murder of George Floyd, it's become almost inadequate for minority ethnic employees, because in reality, it could often mean that the experiences that they receive, the microaggressions, the jokes, the expectations are deemed not serious enough for official action, even if they are traumatizing or the cumulative effect is damaging. I want to tell you a story about from me about what it was like back in the day when I started off as the HR manager. I worked in a retailer, and we got the call, all senior managers to check out. So I was there with the store manager on the tills, the HR manager that was training me, and myself packing. One of the things when I was as HR doing an induction is we prided ourselves with saying that our policies around race, sex, harassment didn't just include employees, but it was also to do with the customers. If the customers did something, we would ban them, take them out of the store. So remember my surprise, there I was packing the shopping of this customer that gave me perhaps the most racial abuse I've ever had in the working environment. And it was very clear that the store manager and the HR manager would do nothing. So there was much talk in organisations these days around the need to be anti-racist without really understanding the why it matters and what it really means. And anti-racism is the policy or practice of opposing racism and promoting racial tolerance. Because Black people, minority ethnic employees, cannot separate their Blackness or the consequences of those Blackness when they enter the workplace, and it can be very, very damaging. So an anti-racist stance is necessary, and it must be clear in action as well as words. So don't leave an employee listening to racial abuse if you can. Simon, can I have the second insight? Everyone needs to feel like they belong. And lots of employers work really hard to have strong diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And they are rightfully proud of what they're doing. But it's really important to understand the need for all employees to feel like they belong. 54% of Black people, 55% of South Asians, 57% of East Asian felt that they were unable to be themselves at work, against 72% of white British people. Also, there's a high proportion, almost 45% of Black and Asian employees who felt that they had to change their behaviour to fit in, compared to 27% of white people. And over 50% of Black and Asian people who felt that the need to fit in, the fact that they had to change who they were, contributed to their poor mental health, compared to 34% of white British people. And I can give you an example, again, back from my youth when I was new into HR manager in another retailer. It was Christmas, I'd been there for about a month, and it was time for the Christmas party. So it was decided that everybody would go to watch a comedian which they'd seen the previous year. And I was really excited about it. I was about 24. Then one of the graduates came to me and said, "Are you sure you want to attend?" And I said, well, why not? Great time to meet everybody over Christmas. And she told me that the comedian was known for his racist action. And I was really surprised, because there was an Indian manager there, and he seemed to have enjoyed it. Anyway, she suggested I didn't go, and I didn't go. On the Monday, she told me how bad it was. And it was really hard for me to listen to my colleagues talk about the fun that they had and what that actually meant to them. And when I looked at the Indian manager, he did not look happy. So it's really important to think about the things outside the workplace when you're looking to make people feel like they belong. And my third and final insight, it's around intersectionality, which is a difficult thing to say sometimes. What that is all about is taking into account people's overlapping identities and experience in order to understand the complexity of the prejudices that they might be facing. So you could see it out there in the world as a dichotomy where we say as adults that all children should feel safe at school and be protected, unless they're considered Black or Black identifying individuals who are treated as adults and are seen as the cause of the issue and not the victim. You may remember child Q pulled out of her exams to be intermittently searched for cannabis. No one thought to let this child finish her exam, which she was due to get great results from, nor to call her parents, nor to be there for her. And I was told many times around this time where Black women had conversations with their co-workers about that, and they felt saddened and upset that the conversation factored around the potential criminality of the child as opposed to her humanity, which is probably not surprising why a Gallup poll found that up to a third of Black women did not feel valued at work. But there is a danger when we put people into groups of protected characteristics, say gender, LGBTQ, or race, because there is a propensity of asking an individual to pick which group that they feel that they fit best in, and ignoring the fact that we are many things. So for example, if you're Black and queer, your experiences will be different from somebody who's white and queer. Or if you are female and disabled, your experiences will be different than male and disabled. So I think perhaps my fourth insight is the defining thing is that leadership is personal. And everybody we come across, we should personalize our leadership with them. And we should always promote the humanity of others and not at the thing that we think stands out the most for them. So they're my insights.
Thank you, Judith. And I think the fascinating thing about that is just how diverse, even within that one category, if you like, the diversity of the experience. And so it's testing. It's a really challenging thing to think about, because it's not always linear. And I think the intersectionality really brings that to home. Okay, we're now going to move on to Ricky, who's going to give us insights 4 to 6. Ricky, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. One of the some research that's been done both in the UK and in the United States over the past few years has shown that despite all the changes in law, despite everything that we have done to try and make legally everything more equitable, we're really not getting there. In the LGBT community, we now know that around 60% of all LGBTQ people are not out at work. That means they don't feel comfortable coming to work and being their true selves, being themselves, and sort of really being a part of it. So one of the most important insights, is my first insight here, is I've got to have clear equality policies that are fairly enforced. Now, it's easy to write a set of statements. It's easier, actually relatively easy, to change the law. Changing attitudes, changing behaviors, much, much more difficult. So if you've got equality policies, they've got to be written in such a way that everybody understands what you are about, what you're doing, what are the rules, what can you and can't you do. And that has to come from top down. It's got to totally be bought by the senior management, because if they don't buy it, what will happen is that their behavior in the way in which they treat and deal with people will show an unconscious bias or a hidden prejudice that's going along. So we have got to get that right. And a lot of organizations have got ERGs, employee resource groups. Sometimes they just have to survive on next to no budget. It's a voluntary thing. I think organizations have got to get behind employee resource groups, help the staff, help members of staff to actually get together and get the messages out across the organization and help to bring the equality policies into being so that they actually work and people understand them and it's part of it. The second insight I want to talk about is about being seen to be inclusive. It sort of follows on quite naturally, but it's actually got to be visible. If I was to go and try and get a job and I saw the brochures and literature of a company and it's all full of white middle-class people, I'm not going to get a sense that this is an inclusive organization. I'm not going to get a sense of belonging. I want to see LGBT people in the committee. I want to see Black, Asian, minority groups. I want to see disabled people. And if that's not there, then there's a sense that you might have an equality policy, but is it really being properly enforced? So you've got to encourage inclusive behavior, include diverse people in all of the publications. So there is this sense and have a champions or allies or buddies program working so that when people come into the organization, they're picked up by somebody who can actually help and can actually pick up on any issues that people are experiencing. Muslim people suddenly find it's very difficult to find somewhere to pray at lunchtime. Those sorts of things need to be picked up and tackled. And I think the other thing is that it's important to connect with local organizations. There are so many days around. I mean, this coming Friday, Bi Visibility Day, bisexual, bi gender. It's a day to promote and highlight the idea that you support people who are bisexual. There's Trans Inclusion Day. There's all sorts of days throughout the year. Almost every day of the year is something. Mental Health Inclusion Day. So it's worth getting those and supporting local voluntary organizations to help them and show to everybody else, the whole world, that you are inclusive. Finally, the sixth insight I want to talk about is about training. You can't expect an organization and people in an organization to automatically get it. This is a complex process. I changed gender in 2002, and nobody would employ me then. And I had to go and study. It took me nearly 5 years to become an expert in diversity and inclusion, and that was still specialist within my area. I still don't know as much as I would like about other protected characteristics. And there's battles going on at the moment with this whole anti-woke thing. But you have to have good awareness and unconscious bias training regularly going on, make it a part of the overall program so people are always being taught and treated. If you're having conferences, bring in external speakers, because it's sometimes very difficult for people internally to express the views and then their lived experience. If you're in an organization that isn't particularly inclusive, they don't have the right lived experience. So bring people in who have it. And get an active ERG program going. But you can't just expect, publish some policy and it'll all work. You have to work it, be seen to be inclusive, and regular awareness and non-bias, unconscious bias training going on.
Lovely. Thank you, Ricky. So just a word of encouragement, if you have any questions already, either for Judith or Ricky, put them in the chat and Jill will pick them up for you for later. Okay, we're now going to hand over to Danielle. Thank you, Ricky. Danielle, your first insight, please.
Thanks. So my first insight is around the cost versus investment of employing disabled people. But what I should say is I asked for my business logo to be included in these slides because, well, it looks scary like me with a have pink hair. But more than that, I want this symbol to be recognised as a disability champion. So I hope that these insights that I share can relate to that. So it's around, the first one is around cost and investment. Although I'm the managing director of my own business now, I have had various experiences of being an employed disabled person. And what in my experience, what has happened is organisations are open to employing people with disabilities to a point, because I think unconsciously a lot of the time there's a thought that if I employ, for example, Danielle with cerebral palsy, she needs this and this in the workplace. So, oh my God, this is going to cost X amount of money and cost the business or the organisation money that we could just do without. So it's easier to employ someone who doesn't have those additional support needs. But what if employers take that view? What they're missing out on is someone that will be so reliable, so enthusiastic about their job, be so committed to the job, have qualifications that they might overlook because they'll see the disability first rather than how qualified I am to do the job. So I guess that insight is to encourage you to think about balancing cost over investment and just being able to take a step back. For example, in Scotland, I know that there'll be different legislations throughout the UK, but just as an example, the Scottish Government have an action plan in place to make a fairer Scotland for disabled people, and by 2038 they hope to half the employment gap between non-disabled people and disabled people. Obviously COVID has sort of put that back slightly and it's had to be revised, I believe, but that is the hope for the Scottish Government, and I hope that could be applied in other areas of the UK. Simon, can you move on? Thank you. So reasonable adjustments. For me, the word reasonable could mean so many different things to so many different people. What's reasonable to me might not be reasonable to you or to the person next to you, for example. But in legislation, in the quality legislation and other pieces of related legislation, it states that reasonable adjustments should be made for disabled people, and also these sort of adjustments can be made through support that you can get as an employer through initiatives like access to work and various other initiatives to ensure that your workplace is accessible. But my point for highlighting this today as an insight is, don't think about making your workplace or environment inclusive. For example, for Danielle, think about making it inclusive for everybody. And it goes back to the first insight. These reasonable adjustments don't need to cost the earth. It can be something as simple as making sure your office has sort of got clear pathways so that people aren't squeezing past each other, or making sure that like equipment is on a surface that's accessible to everybody. Obviously there are specific adjustments. For example, for me, I need a standard, which is a piece of equipment to allow me to use the toilet while I'm in the workplace. Obviously that's specific to me, but there's other adjustments that can be made that actually makes your environment accessible and inclusive for everyone. And I'll just refer very quickly to you may or may not have seen it in social media. It tends to appear around about Christmas time because it has snow in the graphic, and the graphic is a group of people trying to get into a building, and there's a ramp at one side and stairs at the other, and the basic caption of the graphic is if you clear the snow on the ramp, it's included, everybody can get in, but if you clear the snow on the stairs, you're only letting some people in. So that sort of, for me, sums that up pretty well. But if you go to the last one, Simon, I guess all three of my insights have been sort of intertwined, if you like, and it's the fear, I think, that overrides everything. And I guess it's human nature, not just in the workplace. We all have a fear of the unknown, but but it's about getting over that fear. And just for an example, I applied for a position, and it was advertised as a position for a disabled graduate. So I was fortunate enough to apply for the position and be successful. But my employer, and they wouldn't mind me saying this because they admitted it themselves, they admitted that they had been slightly naive in the fact that they had thought that by advertising for a disabled graduate, they thought they ticked the boxes. But actually, once I was successful in getting the job, they had to realise of everything that came with it, that they had to consider as my employer. But I guess they didn't have the fear to begin with. But once they realised the implications, that for them was when the fear sort of set in. Oh no, we should have done this, or we've done it wrong. And there was a lot of conversations of, no, actually, you've done it so right, but you just need to think of the bigger picture and think about it as being more than just getting somebody with a disability into the workplace, but actually what the bigger picture looks like for them. And that's my last insight, and the last insight for this part of the workshop. So I'll pass back to Simon now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Danielle. So a quick question before we go on to the unconscious bias piece, and specifically look at the tool that we wanted to show you today. It's a question in from Nikki Carew, and it says, you all mentioned the need to educate people to be aware of DEI issues. What do you suggest by way of assessing how we stand in DEI issues in our organization, and what training might be needed? Who'd like to answer that one first?
I'm quite happy to take that from the perspective of race, belongingness and intersectionality. I think people can view surveys, especially digital surveys, with suspicion from that group of individuals. And I think confidential listening groups may well be a better way of assessing, because you're talking about how people feel in what they belong, and they can share experiences. And that's a better way of getting a temperature check of the organisation. And once you do that in terms of education, the people you're listening to will have a really good idea as to what education is needed. And quite often for most organisations, seeking external help is better and will be perceived as more trusted than the organisation.
Okay, lovely. Anything extra, Danielle or Ricky, or are you happy that that covers it? You're on mute there, Ricky.
I think focus groups are a particularly good way of doing it. If you can get together a group of people from different protected characteristics in a focus group, that will probably give a fairly good set of, feedback, as long as everybody knows that what they say is not going to be used against them in any way, because often that's the problem. People are fearful of actually expressing their concerns. Yeah. But getting in a focus group where really does work to get people to bring out the issues and problems that they're facing on a day-to-day basis.
Brilliant. And we'll have a quick look later as well at the overall picture, because we talked up front in the objectives about thinking about this as a cultural issue rather than just a specific firefighting issue. So we'll come back to that as well later. Thank you. Okay, so let's have a look about how we overcome unconscious bias. And we wanted to introduce you very quickly to this tool. If you haven't seen it before, it's the GC Index. All of you that registered for the event, you've got a link to actually complete this assessment, and we can get back to you and tell you what your results say. But just to start, in the top right-hand corner here, try not to think personality profile, ignore the colors. Personality profiles give you a little insight into an individual, but you can very rarely make business decisions based on them, whereas the GC Index gives you so much more. So everything starts with an original idea, and the game changers are that type of person who can't switch original ideas off. 3 o'clock in the morning, if they're a 10 out of 10 game changer, they're having to wake up and write down their ideas because they've got some more. And that's really what the game changer is obsessed with, almost, is new ideas, and constantly looking around for new ideas and inputs on a whole array of topics. They throw those ideas over this proverbial wall here, where the strategist then says in a very pragmatic way, thanks for that, but we've only got budget for 3 of those 101 ideas, so we're going to have to prioritize. And the strategist is very good at making sense of the ideas and prioritizing and creating clarity around what it is that we're going to do inside the organization or inside the team even. The implementer loves that clarity because that enables them to just drive change and make things happen. In fact, the implementer, nothing annoys an implementer more than, you know, being in the middle of something and somebody coming along, maybe that game changer, to say, oh, I've got another way we could think about this, or I've got another idea. And the implementer just really wants to get their head down and make things happen. And so the left-hand side here is very pragmatic, very much in the 80-20 rule. So the implementer, 80% is good enough, it's done. Whereas the polisher on the right-hand side is obsessed with making things as good as they can be. So continuous improvement is really what the polisher is all about. And inside a team, that's what they want to contribute, is that ability to see opportunities for making things better. The playmaker in the middle here is someone who is very good at orchestrating activities. So they'll know when's a great time to team up the game changer and the strategist to create some new thinking and to clarify what we're trying to achieve, or how to nurture talent inside the team. Now, the reason why this is a great tool for overcoming unconscious bias is because what it measures is what an individual wants to contribute. What's the impact they want to make? It doesn't say anything about their experience. It doesn't say anything about any of the aspects of DEI that we've already considered. And interestingly, when they've looked at all the data, and there's now thousands and if not millions of pieces of data that sit behind this model, there are no correlations. So it's not as if there's a certain section, if you like, covered within the DEI legislation that always look like this. In fact, I've got a little test for you. So I've got the 3 results for our panelists today for you. And what I'd like you to do is, so when you see it say either left, middle, or right, I'd like you to guess in the chat, just say who you think left is, who you think middle is, and who you think right is, based on what you've seen, okay? Maybe what you've heard as well. But what you're looking at there, you're looking at the fabulously the fabulous panel of ours, Danielle, Judith, and Ricky. Whose numbers correlate to the individual, do you think? How do they want to make an impact? So in the chat, write down left, who you think that is. Is it Danielle, Judith, or Ricky? Middle, Danielle, Judith, or Ricky. And right, Danielle, Judith, or Ricky. Everybody can just quickly type in the chat, and then we'll see what we've got. And whilst you're doing that, let me tell you a little bit more about what these results say. So the results are a mark out of 10. So this person, their highest, and is a posh name, proclivity, their highest proclivity is polisher, and their second is a bit of a combination of playmaker and game changer. So the big thing for them is they want things to be as good as they can be. And they're constantly looking around them at sometimes at the micro changes that would make things better, sometimes at the bigger changes that would make things better, but it's always within context. So this person really wants to look around them and see how things can be better in context. The middle one, it's a game changer playmaker with a polisher there as well, but the game changer playmaker, so they're constantly out there looking for new ideas and seeing how those ideas can make people's lives better. So there's a nice connection there between the game changer, outward looking, lots of ideas, and people is really the combination that they're looking at. And the third one, well, it's everything going on there, but it's the way, in terms of the sequencing of it, it's a playmaker game changer. So it's somebody who's always thinking about people and then looking around as to what are the best ideas that can help people. How can we think about this holistically? How can we actually do something to make things happen on a grander scale? So let's have a look at the chat and see. Jill, can you help me here? Can you see the chat and let me know?
Yeah, we've got one suggestion from Nikki that left is Dr. Daniel, middle is Ricky, and right is Judith. Okay. We've got several here with generally no idea, haven't heard enough to make an assessment, and don't have enough information yet to respond. Yeah. Which is absolutely fine, because this is something, the idea of this is that we're giving a little overview to get you thinking, but and it's quite understandable that you wouldn't necessarily be able to make a judgment immediately. So do we want to reveal who are behind the profiles now? Yeah, thanks, Jill. And you know, the point about this is how these individuals want to make a contribution and how they want to make an impact. So there are our three panelists. So what you can tell from that is almost nothing when it comes to the DEI agenda. And that's the point of this. So if you were to in fact include this, for example, in recruiting, then you'd be able to pull in this information about people without necessarily having any insights as to where they are within the DEI agenda. It just tells you how they want to make an impact and how they want to contribute. And interestingly, the REC, which is the industry body for recruitment, this is the only tool that they recommend. So, you know, it has a strong place to play, a strong role to play in organizations, not just in recruiting, but in all sorts of activities. In fact, it's currently being operated in about 20 different business processes. So yes, you've only maybe just seen this today, but hopefully you can get it. The immediate impact we wanted you to see is that you can't tell from the figures anything about the individuals behind them, other than what they want to do in terms of their contribution. So here is everybody who's on the call who's been able to had an opportunity to complete the profile. That's what this group looks like. So there's 35% of the group want to be out there and have a proclivity, if you like, for looking at for new ideas and being expansive in their thinking. Very much, it's a game changer implementer group. So the next one, as you see there, is the implementer, and that is so if you were to summarize this as a group of people, they're people that like to look for new ideas, and that's probably why you were attracted to this webinar in the first place, because the promise was of insights and new ideas, new thinking. And then this group in particular would want to go away and make it happen and start implementing it with people. So that would be the third aspect of this as a team. The interesting thing is that there would be less consideration as a group of the strategic integration of these thoughts and these insights into our organization, into our teams. So that wouldn't be as high on your agenda. And then seeing it through and creating quality improvements would also maybe not be as high on your agenda. In terms of where your energy is, your energy as a group is to source new thinking and then work out ways of putting them into action. Okay. Alrighty. Let me keep moving forward, because we just wanted to introduce you to this tool just because it's so different in the way that it works. It provides lots of insights for the individuals, so, you know, and you'll be able to see that if you'd like to go through your profile after the event. But equally, it can make a significant improvement inside organizations too. Okay.
So, questions are the answer. What do you need now to make DEI meaningful in your organization? What we'd like you to do is have a think about all the insights that you've heard. Have a think about, maybe you've got some specific challenges in your organization. What is it that you'd like to know next? And then we can share that with our panelists and see what ideas they have for you at this stage. So what do you need to know now to make DEI meaningful in your organization? If you can all just put a few words in the chat and we can keep moving forward. Jill.
How do we make our organisations more attractive to DEI candidates is one question. How can you address issues of discrimination in the workplace when the leadership denies its existence? That's from Sherry. Okay. And just a comment about the GC Index being a brilliant insight tool from moving from confusion to clarity very quickly.
Okay, love it. Okay, so let's take the first one first. How do we make our organizations more attractive to DEI candidates?
Can I add something on that? I in April was really bowled over when I saw Virgin Atlantic's new corporate advertisement. 1 minute, and it made me feel, as somebody in the LGBT community, that I wouldn't want to fly with anybody else. But it was also targeted at all of their staff and all within their organization. And it just displayed within a simple ad that they welcomed diversity, and that everybody would be included. And I think that a lot of organizations can learn from just looking at we know that Virgin Atlantic has long been a very inclusive organization. It's been part of their, I've forgotten the word I want, but yeah, it's part of their identity that they're an inclusive organization. And I think that's where the shift has got to come. The organization from the top down has actually got to start to put out that message. And if you look at Google and Apple and some of these big companies where they have done it, it might be a bit of a challenge to start with, but once it happens, what we know is that those organizations become more profitable. So it isn't just about doing this because it's good to do. You do this because it actually makes economic sense. It helps an organization to become more stable, better growth, and to attract better people.
Yeah. And interesting. I think with the point that Danielle was making as well, there's a huge untapped pool of talent that if you are not making the most of your DEI policies and creating an organization where people do want to apply, you're basically just writing that part of the potential workforce off into your candidates.
Interesting also, picking up on your comment, Ricky, new chat in from AD, and to say to get myself and my ADI team out there and our work understood by the people on the ground. The understanding and buy-in of the senior team is not cascading down. Could well be because the senior team are not generally respected by the workers. And then there's another comment come in from MC Mike Taylor. I'd like to be able to work with external organisations that specialise in different elements of DEI. We don't have a lot of specialist knowledge, but we have a number of well-intentioned people who would like to bring about change, but don't know how to do it effectively yet, which again echoes back to Danielle's point that she made earlier.
Yeah. So Jude, I'm just thinking that there's a combination of Sherry and Alison's questions around, on one level, leadership denying its existence, and on another level, the senior leadership team maybe not being respected by the workforce. So have you got any thoughts for Sherry and Alison around that, the role of leadership in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, that is so common. I think often with leadership teams, especially if they're a homogeneous group, is to demonstrate that DEI, or the failure of DEI, is a failure of leadership, and to try and get them to see that DEI is not a separated add-on to life at work, it's integral to life at work. So I've certainly seen it work really well with the people that I've worked with, is to actually show the collective impact of leadership team and what it is that they're doing, and that can make a big difference between going back. And in terms of respect, I suspect that the team at the top aren't congruent with the messages that they're giving out. And again, that's an endemic leadership issue that needs to be addressed, and they'll be more likely to address it as a leadership than them feeling that they're forced to look at some faddy inclusion element.
Yeah, and there's something else that when we think about the culture of an organization as well, just because a group of leaders are saying something doesn't mean to say it's going to change what's actually happening inside the organization. And that's why it really is about what are your performance measurements that you have in place? What are your recruitment policies? What are your how do you talk about various issues? Is it holistic, and is it consistent? Because all of those things go up to create the culture inside your organization. So if the whole organization's culture is not responsive and thinking about the DEI agenda, it doesn't really matter what a few people at the top of the organization say, because everybody else is getting on with work in the way they've always done it. And so there's some things to think about there as well. Danielle, Mike's question, in terms of not necessarily having the specialist knowledge in-house, but a group of people who would be eager to help. How have you found this sort of thing happening in the organizations that you've worked with?
I think that's you're already halfway there if you have people that are open to learning and want to benefit from, for example, my or Judith or Ricky's lived experience and our knowledge around it. So if you have that already embedded in your organisation, that's an amazing start. I just, if it's coming from the angle of for example, myself as a consultant, it would be my responsibility to come in and ensure that to create a safe space for your colleagues to discuss their gaps in their knowledge and things like that, for us to work together to design what would help you fill those gaps in the knowledge. So I think it has to be very tailored to what you need. So it's about starting those open discussions, but also to pick up on the earlier point about how you would make it more attractive specifically from a disability point of view for your organisation. You may or may not be aware that previously there was a two-tick system that organisations tended to have if they were disability confident, and if companies had the two-tick system, if applicants met with the essential criteria of a job role, they would be guaranteed an interview. That has now been replaced by the disability confident inclusive employer. That's a bit of a mouthful. System, and within this sort of system, there's 3 levels. So level 1 would be, do you know the basics about being a confident employer of people with disabilities? Level 2 would be obviously progressing from that, and level 3 would mean you're a leader in being an employer who is confident in employing disabled people. So it might be worth for all of the people on the call just to take note of that as a way of making it attractive specifically for disabled people. But again, people like myself and other organisations can help you work through that and achieve that award, if that would be something that would be of use.
Lovely, thanks Danielle. Judith and Ricky, anything additional on those questions?
Yeah, I think just listening to what Danielle was saying, the big issue that I don't think we're really getting sorted at all well is tackling bias, unconscious bias, and hidden prejudice. What I've seen since the Brexit vote, because there was a sort of a toxic part of that campaign which started to look at migrants as the problem. And all of a sudden it became very clear, no, we want to close the doors, we want people to come in. It was as if that campaign gave anybody who had a hidden prejudice against non-English people, they suddenly had the right to speak. I'm seeing the same happening within the gender debate at the moment. And people are saying, oh, I support transgender people, just don't want them in women's space. You can't say that. Because what you're saying is, on the one hand, I support trans people, but no, I don't want them here, not in our turf, not in our plane. So we've got this toxicity which seems to have arisen over the past few years, where people have pushed down their biases. We changed all the laws. Everybody sort of said, well, we can't say that, we can't say this. And suddenly they're saying, well, no, I'm going to fight it. And right from the top, I think we've got to get to the point of saying we have to tackle this bias, and we have to start, getting rid of it, because it's a real battle and a real problem. And it's not going to be easy to deal with, but you have to start dealing with it. And my sense is people are not even trying to deal with bias yet.
Yeah. Thanks, Ricky. I think there's something about, as well as having to do something or needing to do something, I think there's real strength in people talking about the desire to do something. So, people feeling like they want an inclusive workforce because of what that's going to mean about who they are in the world. And there's a lot of momentum at the moment behind the notion of love in the workplace, where love means that we care for each other, that we support each other, that we have policies that are there to enable universal inclusive access. And there's something about defining the type of organization that we want to be, and making that front and foremost in terms of all of our external information, as well as the way we communicate about ourselves internally. Back to Ricky's point about Virgin, making that something that's very visible. It's the type of organization that we want to be. I think there's something in that as well that would help in some of those conversations that Mike and Sherry and others were asking, what's behind those questions. There's something about repositioning this as well as something that is absolutely all embracing of the size of the change that we're trying to create.
I think just to add to that, Symes, there's that softer issue, but for some executive teams, they need to know the hard facts, and the hard facts is the cost to your absence when people are on long-term sick, the cost to recruit when people choose, they've done a Google search and choose you're not the best employer, the cost of litigation. There are so many costs that are now adding up. Quitting, disengaged employees, it's a substantial cost not to be inclusive, let alone the humanity and the need to be inclusive as a good employer needs to be.
Yeah, which brings us nicely to what do you need to do now? So if you've heard some of the questions here today, Danielle, Judith and Ricky, what would you suggest people do now? Any thoughts at all?
I would take a long, hard look at the organisation to see where you stack up against the policies that you have and who you want to be, and to think, would I want to work in this organisation if I came from this perspective? And then seek external knowledge to make a difference.
Yeah, Ricky.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of lunch and learn sessions for organisations over the past couple of years, and that's been quite good doing it online, because doing virtual presentations means that organizations can bring in external speakers at a fraction of the cost of trying to run an in-person event. I know everybody's sort of thinking, oh, COVID's over, let's get back to in-person. But yeah, we can do a lot more, particularly in those short time frames, you know, half hour, 3/4 an hour over lunch. And I think the opportunity to bring external thought into a group to make sure you've got a really good buddies, champions, allies program, and encourage and help them to start to spread the word. So that all helps to just really start getting positive messages all the time. The danger with equalities is that we end up in a stick environment where literally everybody's being punished for breaking the rules, punished for saying the wrong thing, and we've got to stop. It's got to be a much more positive thing, to positively encourage people to get rid of our biases, and that will come by an ongoing program of training and education, which doesn't have to be expensive. Do it all virtually now. Do it very well.
Thanks, Ricky. Danielle?
Picking up on Judith's point, I would absolutely agree with both her and Ricky, but just specifically something Judith said about going back and sort of looking at what your organisation does now. I'd go a bit further than that and say, if it makes you review it, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, that's okay, because then you know something's not right. But being able to acknowledge that is the first step. And I would just say as well, if you already have disabled people within your organisation, you might or might not be aware of people within your organisation, for example, with disabilities, because some could be hidden and people might choose not to disclose that, and that's their choice. But even that in itself raises a question of why might people not have disclosed their disability. But if you are aware of people that have disabilities already within your organisation, go back, think about what you've heard today, and ask them where they think the organisation can pick up on things around disability, gender and race, and then from that you'll be able to formulate a plan, even if it's small steps. But even if you don't have people with disabilities within your organisation or any other the characteristics that you're aware of, just break down the bigger steps into smaller steps, because I guess that's what we're here for, to help you address.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Danielle. So these are the names of our three panelists, as you will find them on a LinkedIn search. So if you want to connect with any one of them individually following this webinar, then obviously you can do that. We've also got some next steps for you in a moment. But for now, thank you, Danielle, Judith, and Ricky. That was absolutely brilliant. So many insights there. And I think also a message of hope, because what I heard was a lot of pragmatism in what all of you said, in terms of, you know what, start where you are, and then let's see where we can go next. And here's something that we would talk about in the Changemaker group, because the reason why we've put this webinar on is because what we're good at is, as an organization, is helping organizations to change. So wherever you are right now in this, with regard to this DEI issue, you will have some issues that are to do with change, people struggling with change, people opposing change, people not pushing back against change. Doesn't really matter. There'll be change, will be at the heart of it. And what this model is really trying to say is the point I was making earlier: culture is the way things happen in your organization. So if the leaders are saying something, but your managers aren't aligned, your roles and processes aren't defined effectively, and the people's frame of reference isn't correct, it really isn't going to make an impact. If you've got all of the policies right down in this left-hand corner, you've really worked through all of those issues and you've got all the policies correct, but the managers are unaware of them. People don't know what it's all about, and the leaders are not living against those policies. Again, the culture of the organization is not going to be right. So what this model is trying to say very simply is you need an alignment across all of them. And but don't be put off by what could otherwise look like quite a complex model. In many respects, this is just a shorthand opportunity to say, okay, let's do a quick assessment. Let's understand where we are and what are the particular issues that we've got, and then start to create an alignment across the organization. So that's what the perspective from us at the Changemaker Group on this one. So next steps. If you'd like to discover your personal GC index scores, so you were all sent a link, and if you've done that already, or if you'd like to do it, and then just drop us a line and say, can you tell me more about this? We'll very happily jump on a call with you and give you some perspective on your personal GC index scores and how you could maybe use that as part of your DEI improvement. Or if you'd like to discuss any aspect of DEI, all of the things our experts have shared today, all you need to do is write to office@thechangemakergroup.com and request a call, and we'll get back to you and organize that. And in your email, if you can let us know your biggest DEI challenge, then hopefully we can point you in the direction of a real expert to try and support you in that call. And all of our experts have volunteered to be part of any follow-up conversations that we have here today. So feel free to get in touch with us, office@thechangemakergroup.com, and we'll we'll arrange that call with you. Last thing to say is look out for some specific webinars. So again, each of our experts has volunteered to put on a webinar that's specifically about their areas. So that could form part of one of those lunchtime sessions that Ricky was talking about. It could be a little group of you from your workplace that want to get on a webinar that Ricky's hosting all around the gender agenda, or it could be something with Judith around the race and the diversity agenda. Could be something with Danielle around disability. So we are going to be putting those on over the next couple of months. So look out for those. We will keep you in touch with those anyway, if you're happy for us to send you emails and just promote those as we go. But other than that, I just want to spend, just very quickly thank Danielle, Judith, and Ricky again, and ask Jill for last check-in with Jill. Is there anything urgent that we haven't covered, Jill? Are we all good? Oh, you're on mute, Jill.
All right. No, we're all good. Some appreciation from Sherry about the topics of discussion and answer to the questions. So thanks to all the panelists. A really good summary one from Nikki, saying there's lots of challenges all of us are facing in the world. We need to harness all energies and perspectives. And then finishing by saying the echo chambers have got us to where we are now. So it's about doing some action. And lastly, Vanda, this really sets up for parts 2 and 3. So some enthusiasm there for wanting to know more. And again, a thank you for the suggestions and presentations. So
excellent. And that's a great point. If there's anything specific you'd like us to cover beyond the 3 webinars we've planned, then by all means, just drop us a line. Okay. Thanks again to everybody for being involved. We will share the recording of this somehow over the next week or so, and we look forward to speaking to all of you again soon. Take good care.